Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this week's tutorial is going to show you the process for painting pet portraits. So a little bit of a different tutorial because I'll be demonstrating how to do the dog on the left, but I'm also going to be talking about techniques for how to paint pet portraits, specifically in this case a dog portrait, how to select a photo, how to crop that photo, a little bit information about that, and how to transfer your picture of your dog to be used as a traceable on your canvas. So I will be using the picture as a guideline and tracing that onto the canvas so that I have the drawing, the proportions, and the eyes just right. You are also welcome to draw your dog if you'd rather draw that instead. So I'm going to be using a 9 by 12 canvas. This is a smaller canvas than I usually work with because we are going to be printing a picture of our pet on standard size computer paper, so 8.5 by 11 computer paper, and we'll be trying to stretch that as much as possible to fill out the paper. And we're going to have some space above and around the dog or cat or pet, whatever pet you're doing. That's okay. So I used pixabay.com to find this picture. It's a royalty-free image database. You can do the same if you want to do a specific animal. If you have a certain breed of dog, you can type that breed in and see if the dog looks like yours. Of course, you can use a picture of your own pet. I have a lot of information on my website about how to take that picture, how to crop it, how to select a certain picture for contrast reasons. So you can read that info on the website. So I'm using this particular dog as an example. I just saved it to my phone and I want to crop it. We could paint what we see, but it's small and not focused. We want to simplify this painting and try to make it as easy as possible for beginners. So we want to crop it so we could do the paws down here. Again, that we can, but we want to focus more on the eyes, the nose. So if I crop it like this, we have the ears, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and just the front region. That would be a lot simpler, and we have less to transfer and trace, and we can really focus on the eyes. The eyes are the most important part of this, so you want to find a picture of a dog that has clearly visible eyes, large enough to paint so that we're not using a toothpick to paint the little tiny details in the eyes. We will be using a tiny brush, but if we didn't crop it, there'd be not a lot of space to work with. So we want to print our picture out as large as possible. So you can print it from your phone or device. Get it so it prints out on a large sheet, so it fills out the entire piece of paper. And my printer, like I'm out of printer ink, you can tell. I printed this dog out, and that's okay. You can even print it in black and white. What we really just need is enough contrast to where we can see the outline of the eyes, the ears, and the outline of the shape of the dog. That's all we really need, and we can use that photo as a reference, but also look at our phone to look at the real image as well. So you just lay a sheet of graphite paper under your picture. So this is just like using a traceable, only we're kind of making this into a traceable. But you want to just go ahead and outline the main features of your pet. So I started with the eyes. It's really important that you get that outline of the eye, but also outline the pupil, the highlight. The highlight is a big deal, so make sure you trace the highlight in the pet's eyes. The nose, same thing. Make sure you outline the kind of curvy circular part on the inside. There's sometimes a line going down the middle of the nose. So really the main features of your printout, you want to outline all of that. This dog has a tongue. I'm going to make sure I outline that tongue shape. The mouth I'm going to just kind of simplify. So I just outline kind of an organic shape area where the teeth are and the lips. So just kind of outline where the edge of the lips are. But really you want to make sure that you outline the shape of everything. So the teeth, just a few little shapes to represent where his teeth are. And of course, if you're using a different image, it's going to kind of vary This painting is not going to be realistic. This tutorial is meant for beginners. I'm going to try to simplify this as much as possible. You can change the colors. So when we start talking about colors, I'm going to bring out browns for the dog because he's brown. But if you want to make a purple dog or a green dog or make kind of a pop art style, you're welcome to do that. I almost decided to leave the collar out, but I figured, oh, the collar would be kind of a fun accessory, and I'm going to make it a contrasting color from the background. So I'll be doing a yellow background on this, so I decided that I'm going to do a purple collar to give it some really pretty contrast. So you can have fun with colors if there's an accessory like a ball, maybe there's a ball in the picture, or a collar, or maybe a bow or something like that. So you can already see we have the outline. I'm just going to outline the main shapes of her collar. So I selected this dog because she actually looks like one of my dogs. Do the floppy ears. Make sure I'm going to a lot of the something else that's important is if there's a really dark shadow area, like the ears, we have kind of the dark shadow areas in the ears, but also there's some lines and wrinkly things here. I'm going to outline some of those wrinkles so that that'll help me with how, as I'm painting this in, I'll know what direction to paint my strokes to kind of, I'm not going to make those look realistic because wrinkles are kind of a challenge to paint, but just that's going to help me with the direction of my strokes. So right here we have some darker areas. If you're doing a dog that has like a border collie, it's got black and white fur, make sure you outline where the division of that color happens. Or if you're doing a Dalmatian, definitely outline all those spots. So whatever dark features are on the pet, you want to make sure you outline everything. When you pull it off, you have this beautiful outline of your pet. It makes the painting process a little bit less stressful, a little bit less intimidating. So I was going to prime this first, and I forgot. I decided to just trace it on the canvas first. But priming would mean that we paint the canvas a solid color first and then do our tracing over it. But because I didn't do that, I'm going to do it this way. And this way is fine too. You just have a blank white canvas to work with. I'm going to paint the background around my tracing. And again, that's fine too. So you're going to select a color. Basically, step one, we're painting the background first. If you primed it first, you can skip this step, but I'm painting the background first and I selected yellow. So I used titanium white. You want to select white as one of your colors and you want to blend it with your other colors. So yellow, this is a Hansa yellow. It's a Deco Art Americana color. I just happened to grab it. It's a really pretty bright yellow, bright lemon yellow. But I'm basically just going to paint using a 3/4 flat brush. I'm going to double load the yellow and the white in, and I'm just going to do angled strokes around the dog. You want to try not to paint over your lines, but if you do accidentally get some over the lines, or if your dog has long fur and you really have to paint over the edges, that's fine. We can always paint over that background after that dries, so that should be fine. But just using the edge of your brush to really edge the outline around your dog. I'm not going to blend the yellow and the white all the way, so I'm going to have streaks of bright yellow, streaks of white, so that it's not a solid color. It's interesting. It's got some depth to it. I don't recommend that you make a complicated background. If you want later on, you can add like polka dots or something else. But if our background is too busy, we might lose focus on the dog. So just keep it simple and do a very basic background. I recommend that you let this background dry a little bit just because we'll be working in the middle and we don't want to accidentally smudge some yellow over areas we don't want yellow. So let this dry a little bit and then get ready to paint your dog. So I will be using browns for mine, but like I said, you can change the color of your dog if you want to have fun and make it kind of a pop art style dog. You're welcome to do that. You'll need your picture that you printed out. I'll be using mine. I'll also be looking on my tablet at the original photo because my printer did not print this very clearly. You'll need Mars Black, and you'll also need whatever color the eyes are. So mine have brown eyes. I'm using Raw Sienna, which is a light reddish brown, Burnt Sienna, and actually that one was Burnt Umber. I'll also be using Burnt Sienna as well. Did not load my palette with the Burnt Sienna yet. Let's talk about brushes really quick. You'll need a brush. So this left one, the blue one that I'm holding, and the white one, those are all little tiny round brushes that I like to call them. One is a 3-0 brush and one is a 10-0. I'm going to use the blue one mostly because it has bristles that are a little bit longer, so a little bit easier to control than the ones with the smaller, shorter bristles, but you can use that one as well. Go ahead and load it into the black and start. We're going to start with the right eye, and I'm just going to outline the outer part of the eye, very thin line. You need to really observe where the dark areas are of the eye. So if you look at the right eye, the black around the eye, the black outline is basically what we are doing now. There are grays and whites and shadowing, but we're simplifying this painting the best that we can. So right now we're just outlining it. If you need to loosen your black with a little bit of water to let that to help you with that, you can. Just be really careful that your water's not dripping down the ferrule and making a puddle and already messing this up. So a little bit of water in that black is fine. That helps to get your lines to be super thin. So I'm just outlining that, basically that outer line that I traced is what is being painted black right now. Looking at the picture, the reference photo, we have this inner part black. So basically kind of around the colored part of her eye is black. So I'm filling that in around that. It kind of goes up. Yours obviously will be different if you're using a different reference photo, but still the techniques are the same. Likely you will be outlining your eyes with the black as well, and likely the inner part will be black. Obviously this is different if you're doing a cat. You just want to really observe where the dark areas are inside the eye and replicate that. It's easier to replicate because we've already traced the division of the colors in the eye onto the canvas. We just want to make sure we're filling them in correctly. And then right here, I'm going to do around the colored part of her eye. She has brown eyes, so I grabbed my raw sienna color and I'm just going to start painting that in. I didn't wipe my brush off. I often don't rinse my brush off between colors because I like when those colors just end up blending together on the canvas, and that's okay. So I'm doing the colored part of her eye with the raw sienna color. It's probably not the exact same color in the photo, and that is okay. We are simplifying this picture. This is for beginners. A little bit of that burnt umber, which is that super dark brown, and just kind of mesh that in with my lighter brown. If your dog has blue eyes, you can use a light blue or a cerulean blue. Mix a lot of white into it to lighten it up. If you're doing a green eyes, you can use any kind of green color. Just use the black to darken it or the white to lighten it up. I am going to do, so there's not a lot of black pupil in this because she has a lot of highlight on her eye. They're very sparkly, bright, shiny eyes. So I am going to do a little bit of that dark pupil in the center part because I did draw that center circle, but I want to leave the middle circle that I drew on the eyes blank and white because that is where her highlight is. And I'm not going to paint over my highlight because I don't want to lose where that highlight is. So I'm doing the black pupil middle part with black, but I'm leaving the white highlight open. Again, make sure you're really observing your reference photo. I remember in a lot of my college painting classes, my professor always stressed that you need to be looking at your subject more than your canvas. So looking at your reference photo more than your actual painting is going to really help get what you're seeing in your reference photo on your canvas. I'm going to load some more titanium white onto my palette, and I'm going to utilize that white to kind of do the white part of the eye. So right here we have a little bit lighter color. I'm just filling that in. Again, did not rinse my brush. And over here as well. And there's also a kind of inner eyelid in the corner. So I'm doing that black, the corners towards the nose and painting that black. So there's just a little bit of that white part of the eye showing through. Without rinsing my brush, I grabbed the raw sienna, that's that lighter brown, and I'm going to start doing some of the fur. I am not going to paint all the fur with this tiny brush. That would be tedious and that would take hours. But what I want to do is just do a little bit of the fur on the outside of the eye, and then I went with that black and kind of re-outlined that outline. So taking that raw sienna, go kind of around the eye so that fur that's kind of outlining that eye, and the direction of my strokes is going in that direction of the eye. If obviously you'll be doing a different color if you're changing the color of your animal or you have a different color dog that you're painting. And same thing with the bottom with that lighter color. It should be a lighter color than the eye. That's going to give you a lot of contrast. Unless the eyes are dark and the fur is dark, you wouldn't be doing it that way, I suppose. I'm going to switch to a number 4 round brush. So I'm done with my little tiny detail brush for now. I might go and touch up the eyes later. I'm going to grab my 4 round and we're going to start filling our fur in with this brush. So I'm going to grab, this is the burnt sienna. So the burnt sienna has a lot of the reddish colors, and so does the raw sienna. It's going to pull some of the reddish colors. The dog has kind of a warm brown. So your siennas are going to give you that warm brown color. The umbers are going to give you that dark kind of cool brown colors. So I'm going to use my 4 round brush and mix white with burnt sienna. So as we're doing this, we'll be using white to help lighten some areas and using the black to help darken some areas. We're doing contouring strokes. So I'm going to continue this around the eye thing by painting this kind of a reddish brown around her eyes. So the direction of the strokes is going to vary depending on the direction that the fur is going in. So right here, if you look at the photo, it's kind of going down around the eye. Again, we're not trying to match the color, but we are using the reference to help us with the direction of the fur. So this is going around the eye, it's contouring around the eye. And if you think that's too dark and don't like it, you can always lighten it up. Then I like to just kind of start edging the shape of the dog. So I'm just kind of using that white and burnt sienna. You're really going to be making up colors. So as you go reload, you might grab different browns or different whites, and it's okay. So looking at your photo, you notice maybe that part's a little bit darker, so you're going to add more of that pure brown, or maybe even a touch of black, or maybe some part is lighter, so you're going to grab a little bit more white in that area. But basically just kind of edging the shape of the dog with soft round brush strokes. Grabbing white and the raw umber. So right here, it's lighter right there. So if you look at the photo, that brown is lighter. So I grabbed raw sienna and white. That's going to give me my very, very light brown. Expressive strokes. Try to paint loosely. And then right here, kind of doing the edging of the shape of the dog. So if your dog has long fur, your edging might not be smooth strokes. You might be doing kind of fur strokes on the edge, so they're kind of sticking out over the background. But she's got short hair, and the texture isn't really overlapping any part of the background. I'm going to go around the tongue, around the collar, so going around all your main features, contouring those strokes, just kind of letting them blend gently on the canvas, trying not to over blend. Right here. So that's a little bit darker. Looking at the photo to the left, it's kind of a shadowy area. So I am going to grab more of that darker color. Could have even just painted that burnt umber, that's that darkest brown. And we can always go back and make it darker or lighter. Just kind of taking this one area at a time, making sure I'm observing my photo. If an area looks lighter, go back around the eyes. So up here we have that distinct line, those two kind of vertical lines for the bridge of the nose. I made sure I did that when I traced it, so I knew those lines were there. Add some more white. So this is lighter up here. She's got lighter. The way the lighting is hitting her, the fur's lighter at the top, the forehead area. It's also lighter along the nose, the bridge of the nose, above the nose. And so these strokes are curving outwards. These strokes are kind of curving this way. Letting that kind of blend. Very loose style of painting. I'm just gently letting those browns blend together. So the nose, we can probably do vertical strokes. If you wanted to do horizontal strokes, there is a line. So if you see that picture, there's a distinct kind of line. So I did that line darker. And then on each side of the line, I'm having the strokes kind of part. So they're kind of going curved outwards on each side of the line. Along the bridge of her nose, we have lighter fur color. And again, it's kind of parted on each side of that line. So I'm grabbing more white and just grabbing that white on my brush. Kind of, sometimes I'll mix the colors quickly on the palette. A lot of times I'll just let them blend right onto the canvas. Again, this is loose, abstract. We're not blending all the way. We're not rendering it further into realism. If your dog has longer fur, you can, I do a little demonstration at the end of this video for a long-haired dog. So you can fast forward to the very end and kind of see the technique that I do. It's very similar to this technique, only I'm doing kind of longer strokes to create the fur texture, and also the longer strokes are kind of hanging out of the shape. So because she's got short hair, the strokes aren't going over the edges of the lines, making the around the eye a little bit lighter. I was looking at the photograph, it isn't that dark around the eye, so just added a little bit of lightness around the eye. And then I rinsed my brush off to kind of start fresh with the nose. So with the nose, I start with black, and I'm doing the inside part. So the inside part of her nose is very dark, so we're doing the black on the inside of the nose. And this technique is very similar to any kind of dog painting that you're doing. So if your dog is a gray dog, he likely will have that really dark part on the inside of the nose. So do that dark, and then we've got this line down the middle that kind of divides the nose up, and then kind of that outline part on the bottom. And then we need to add some grays into this. So I'm going to load my palette with white and mix about equal parts white and black. And then on the top, doing this gray color at the top. It should be lighter than the color. So the darkest part of the nose is on the inside part of the nostrils that we painted solid black, but everything else around it is going to be a medium or light gray. So I'm just going to contour that around that with this gray and up. So curved strokes going in that direction of the shape. letting those colors kind of gently blend together, but keeping it very loose, abstract. We don't have to render it perfectly. Getting some more white, and this bottom part is also gray going around the inner part. We want to make sure that the inner part stays solid black and everything else around it is gray, and we can add some lighter colors to this next, but we're just painting the rest of this that gray color. It gets dark towards the bottom, so we can add a little bit more darker gray at the bottom where it's kind of shadowy. So down here I added a little bit more black. There's a little line just below the nose to where the top of her mouth is, and then stippling. Stippling means that we're just painting dots. So I'm doing kind of a textured stroke here, just doing little dots of black right there. That's the upper part of her lip, and it's pretty dark right there. Grabbing some brown, and I know that this is also dark, but it's going to be kind of a dark brown, and I'm also stippling that texture right under the nose for the upper part of the mouth. And then going back to my browns, like what I was doing earlier, just filling this the rest of this in, kind of going in the direction of that mouth. And then we need lighter color now to fill in the rest of that mouth. So you can rinse the brush off if you need to, get that black off so that this doesn't turn gray. This is a lighter color, so I'm going to extend this kind of outwards. Looking at my reference photo, that part gets light. Just going to drag that outwards using that raw sienna, raw sienna and white. Grabbing some other browns as well, just kind of distributing that into the rest of the fur with that lighter color. Kind of taking that lighter color and kind of adding it to the rest of the fur so it blends in with the mouth. Doing the same thing on the left side, kind of curving that, extending that outwards so that part of the mouth is a little bit lighter. Curves around the nose. And I'm creating some more lighter colors. So that's the white mixed with the raw sienna. I want to lighten this up around the eyes. So we have lighter color in this area based on the reference photo, lighter color along the nose. Next, I'm going to do the ears. So we have lights and darks in our ears, and I'm going to start with the outer part. So long strokes to kind of fill the shape in. So I'm kind of outlining the outer part of the shape, but using sort of long strokes to fill in the ears. There's dark and shadow areas under the ears, and this part, it kind of gets a little bit shadowy as well. So I'm painting the dark areas of the ear right now on the upper part of the ear. Grabbing my lighter color and filling the rest in. Just long strokes filling in that ear shape. Grabbing that white. Can have some lighter areas on the outer parts of the ear. I left the under part of the ear so it's flopping over. The under part of the ear is darker, so I want to make sure I'm using my darkest brown in that part. That's where I grabbed the burnt umber and burnt sienna. Those are two dark browns. I double loaded my brush in both of those colors. I might even go in there and add a little bit of black, so that part where the under part of the ear is shadowy and the outer part of the ear should be a little bit lighter. Going to kind of make sure my face head part is defined, so I grabbed a little bit of that lighter color in there. And then doing the same thing on the left. So this part is a little bit lighter. Grab some more whites, and then under part of the ear, I grabbed my two darkest browns, even a little bit of black in there to make that part dark and shadowy. And then it flops over, and the part that is showing, that's flopping over, is a lighter brown color. So I rinsed my brush off and wiped dry. I'm going to go back on my nose. So I'm mixing a lighter gray on my palette, and I'm just going in, and I've thought about stippling a lot of texture on the nose, but that's going to take a long time to stipple all those little textured dots on there. So I decided just to outline with that lighter gray the part around our dark area, so the dark inner nostril area, that's solid black, just kind of loosely outline that outer part with kind of a lighter gray. And then going back on the ear on the right, I want to make this inner part a little bit darker, so a little bit more burnt umber and a teeny bit of black, just to make sure that that part is a little bit extra dark and shadowy. Makes it look like our ears are flopped over. There's a few darker, if you look at the photograph, I know that the photo's kind of cut off in the video right now. There's some darker parts of the ear that's flopped forward, but for the most part, it is lighter than that shadowy part. I'm going to start filling in the body area, and instead of using the round brush, which gets a lot of rounded strokes, I want to kind of loosen this up even further and use my 3/4 flat brush for this large area. So all of this is a lighter brown color, and I just grabbed raw sienna, titanium white. I could grab the other browns too, but it should be pretty light. I'm going to be very abstract and loose about this. So that's a little bit more of that raw sienna color. And you can see what's happening with these kind of bigger strokes. It's filling it in faster. We can just do some very sharp kind of strokes that don't blend all the way. So this one's kind of going this way. Letting it not blend all the way is key here. Maybe it's a little bit darker, kind of over here. It's a little bit of a shadow line on the photo, but generally this is a pretty light brown area. Trying not to overblend. I did accidentally grab a little bit of gray on my brush, but that's okay. That little bit of gray just adds some different color variation into our dog, and that was pretty simple. Just basic blended large strokes, unblended, using the full width of the brush, using the tip of the brush to do the edging of the shape. Also, if your dog has long hair, your fur might be overlapping part of the background. And so you can fast forward to the end of the video and I can demonstrate to you what I would do if the dog had long hair. So then I'm going to show you how to make the tongue color. So for the tongue, I recommend medium magenta, titanium white, and Mars black. So that Mars black is going to help us make that pink look kind of a grayish pink. It's going to tone that pink down so it's not super bright. Unless you're doing a pop art style and you want that bright pink color, you can do that. But basically, mix about 1 part pink to 2 or 3 parts white to lighten it up, and add a very, very tiny bit of black in there. When you add that little bit of black in there, that's going to make your pink look kind of like a grayish pink dog tongue color. And looking at the photograph, it's lighter towards the bottom and it gets kind of darker in the back, a little bit of a shadowy area towards where the tongue is inside the mouth. And that's going to be pretty consistent if whatever dog you're painting, if there's a tongue, it's going to be darker and shadowy where the opening of the mouth is. So we're going to just start by painting, and I'm using the 4 round brush, by the way, just painting that lighter part first. And then as we approach the back, we can kind of blend that pink so it gets darker towards the back. If you're doing this and it already looks too dark, you can always lighten that color up quickly by adding a little bit more white to it. So right here, I grabbed just the medium magenta on my brush and I'm applying that. I'm just outlining that part, the top part of the tongue. By the way, I'm going to, this cute little dog has spots on his tongue. I'm not going to paint the spots. I'm just simplifying this and just doing a solid pink color tongue. And then grabbing little bits of black. You just want to be really careful when you're using black to darken because the black is, it's a very strong color. So we don't want to get it too dark, but just blending that black into that pink so it's super dark in the back, and then grabbing more pink and then introducing that back into the lighter part. So I'm going to blend, so we have a dark pink, we have a light pink, and we need these two colors to blend. I'm actually going to use my finger to smudge this to blend. So we have the transition zone where that dark and light meet. So I can use my brush and just kind of try to render that. But if you just use your finger to smear it, that will help you mesh those colors together. Just using the finger to smear those colors so it's darker in the back, lighter on the bottom, grabbing a little bit extra white towards the very bottom, and we have a very basic tongue. There is a very distinct dark line that goes down the middle of the tongue, and I'm going to use, I'm back at, this is the blue brush, the one that I use for the eyes, the 3-0 round brush. I mixed pink and black together to make a very, very, very dark pink, almost a grayish dark pink, and did a very thin line right down the middle. And while I have this little tiny round brush in my hand, I'll just kind of loosely outline the tongue to really define that shape. I'm also going to loosely outline just on the bottom of her mouth with the lighter brown. So this is white with a little bit of raw sienna, just a little tiny bit of outline. Oh, that might have been too much, but I could always just go back over that with a darker color if I need to, just to get a distinguished shape between the top of the mouth and our tongue. Get there, go back there with a little bit of black, going back in and stippling that part with the black. So we're gonna try to simplify the inside of the mouth. So her lips and teeth, we're gonna simplify that as much as possible. I'm going to start with the dark part of the lips. So it's mostly black. This is the number 4 round brush. And I'm just going to look at that shape. So we have the black kind of goes up here to her smile. It's a lot of black, but there's a lot of, I'm going to leave where the tooth is showing over here on the left of the tongue. I'm going to leave that white and pretty much paint the rest of it black. So just loosely outlining the shape of her mouth and lips. It kind of goes down this way with the black. Just when something is kind of tricky, a lot of times I'll just paint very, very short strokes and just sketch my way through it. Right here, we have that one tooth showing, so I'm just going to paint around that tooth and leave the tooth part white. So there's that one tooth that we see on the left, and pretty much the rest of this is black. Grabbed a little bit of white on my brush to kind of make that gray. You can see what happened there. It's not solid black. I just grabbed a little bit of white and just turned that part gray. I'll do the same thing over here. There's more teeth showing on the right side, but I'm going to take that gray. So this lip down here, this bottom lip is a gray, just kind of letting that sort of blend to create that gray color. Not a lot of lip showing at the top, but around these teeth, you have a dark area. Painting around the teeth. Again, just abstractly, loosely painting this in. Very loose strokes, not super defined. Going a little bit of dark under on the top part of the mouth. I have a little bit of a dark lined area on her neck, over here just to the right of the tongue. And a little bit over here. And I'm not going to go render that even further. I'm just going to let that be simplified the way the mouth looks now. And I'm just touching up the edges of the ear. So because I started with a blank white canvas, there might be some white parts still showing through. There's a little bit on the ear. That's why I added just a little bit of color right there on the ear. The highlight of the eyes, I left white, but instead of leaving that white, I just took my round brush with the white and just went over where that blank part was and added the white paint in there instead of just leaving it white. But if you want to just leave it white because you worked on a white canvas, you can do that as well. I'm just loosely touching up, very, very loosely outlining that eye with the black again. Making sure that eye is very distinct. It's a very loose black outline. So next I am going to work on her collar, and I decided to do a purple collar because the background is yellow, so purple and yellow are great contrasting colors, perfectly contrasted colors actually. And this is Prism Violet. If you wanted to use a different color, you are definitely welcome to change colors. Whatever color you used for the background, maybe you want to use a contrasting color for the collar. And I'm using white, so I'm doing that whole blending with the white thing on the canvas, so it's not just solid, the same color purple throughout. We have some color variation with our white, and I'm letting those colors just kind of blend and do their thing. I want to go around that black buckle clip thing, so I'm just going to leave that part blank for now because that's going to be painted black. So I'm just painting that collar part, contouring that stroke, going in the direction of the shape of that collar. Over here on the left, same thing. And there is a black buckle if you look on the image on the left part, but I left that out for simplification reasons, a little bit of color right there. And so then I'm going to do the black. So that buckle shape piece is solid black, but there is some white highlight in there, so I'll be utilizing the white to kind of bring that highlight out, but just outlining the shape of that buckle and then filling it in with that black color. Trying my best to go around the tongue, but if we accidentally paint over the tongue, that's okay. We can always go back and touch that up later. So to do the highlight of that buckle, I just grabbed some white and did the edging. So there's white, letting that kind of blend with the black, create that shiny piece that's kind of at the top of the buckle. And we're just keeping that simple. We're not going to render that any further. But I do want to add a little bit more color variation in my purple. It kind of got mixed into the same kind of purple, so I'm adding a little bit more white in there, just a pop of brighter color. And to make some of that purple look darker, I added a little bit of black in there. So this left part of her collar is a little bit darker. We can go ahead and rinse the brush off. I was waiting for the mouth to dry before doing the teeth, but we can rinse it off and grab our white. And very simplified teeth. I'm just painting kind of that curvy shape thing right here. We have several teeth that are showing just very abstract shapes with a solid white and a teeny tiny bit of pink in the lips. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I just grabbed some pink and just quickly added teeny tiny bit of pop of pink in there on the lips. For detail work, I did little black dots. So if you look on the edge of the upper part, like around her nose, little black dots where those whiskers are. These are tiny details that you don't have to do if you don't want to, but just a few little dots. And then I'm loosely outlining this part of the tongue, touching that up just in case part of that collar got painted over her tongue, but making sure that part is a little bit lighter than the rest of the tongue, just kind of going back over the edging of that. And then we can go in and, so look at your photograph. If there's any parts of the fur that are maybe darker, I'm just going in and adding a few areas, like over here around the eyes, there's some darker pieces of fur. And I know this doesn't show up in the photograph, but I wanted to add a cute little highlight on top of her nose. It is kind of bright and shiny up there, but just kind of do a little like a comma shaped curved line on the top of her nose, and just touching up the ears wherever I think a few little touch-ups need to be. For the most part, our dog is finished. Again, we're not rendering her realistic, loose, abstract. That's what we were going for. But I do want to touch up the background. So you might have areas where you might have painted over too much of the background, but I want to just kind of go in and add a second layer to the background. If you primed your canvas first, so if you painted the canvas a solid color and did your dog over this, you'll want to do this step to just kind of make the background a little bit more interesting, add a second coat to the background. But I'm just going back in with my yellow and white, just kind of maybe some areas of the background, maybe it would look better if there's a little bit more white in some areas or a little bit more yellow in other areas. I'm just touching up my background, letting that white and yellow gently blend together. It's also good, so if your ears went too far over the background, you can use the background to kind of touch up areas that you don't want where the dog shouldn't have been painted. So you can kind of use that as a way to touch up your painting along the edges. Lastly, I'm going to show you how to do whiskers. If you want to do whiskers on your dog or cat, I recommend using your really tiny round brush for this. You want your black or white to be very, very thin, and you can practice a few strokes on your palette or a separate paper. But to thin it down, you want to add a little bit of water to your paint, and you want to not make it so it's dripping, so practice elsewhere, but doing very, very quick, thin lined strokes. So just that brush, the paint right there on the tip of the bristles. See how I kind of do the stroke on my palette first, and then I go and do it on the canvas. So she's got some black whiskers on the top part of her mouth. She's got a few above her eye. Again, I don't want to go super detailed into this because my goal was to simplify this dog. So going into too many details kind of defeats the purpose. There's one more thing I'm going to show you with our brown dog. If you want to kind of soften the edges of your dog pet portrait, I'm going to take kind of a gray. So I took that brown and kind of added more of a gray to it. And I am loosely outlining the outer edges of this. I'm not outlining everything like a coloring book, but just the outer edges. With that gray is going to kind of soften the edges to make her look like more part of the background. Just adding that little bit of gray along the edges. And this is the conclusion of how to paint a dog portrait, specifically this brown dog example. I did mention in the video that if you're doing a long hair dog, I was going to demonstrate to you at the end some of the techniques that you would do differently than what I showed you. So I have this one transferred out, the same process I used for the other one. But when I did the transfer, I made sure to do the edges. So you can see all the long hair edges, the kind of jagged lines I did. You would do, and this is a primed canvas, so I painted the entire canvas a solid coat of a lime green color, like a really thin down layer of paint. So that's helpful if you want, so it's a different kind of technique. It's going to prevent a lot of that white showing through at the end. But when you're going to paint her in, so this Border Collie has long fur, your strokes are going to be longer strokes. So I'm still using that 4 round brush, but I'm doing the longer strokes. You can see I'm on the edges with this black and doing longer strokes, kind of paying attention to the direction of where those strokes are going in the fur. And we don't have to use just solid black everywhere. We can utilize the white. So I'm using black and white. So a little bit of white into that black is going to give that black some color variation. We don't want it to turn super light gray or white. We still want it to be mostly black, but adding teeny bits of black or teeny bits of white in there is going to give us that color variation so that we can make some of the black fur look darker in some areas. So she's got really dark fur around her eye, and it kind of the way that light's hitting it, there are some lighter areas in the black, so make sure you're using the white. You can even use a little bit of brown in there if you wanted to be advanced, but for the Border Collie I would recommend just the white and the black. So there's black up here. So see what I'm doing? I have to go over that background, but the edges, I'm making sure that the strokes are creating that textured edge to give it that fluffy dog look. And just really looking at my example picture, there's some darker areas. There's going to be a little bit of that green showing through. Using that white. I did not paint the eyes first, but if I was doing a whole demo video of this, I likely would have done the eyes first. I'm basically just demonstrating how I would do the fur for a long-haired dog. And so she's got that white here. Down the middle, we have more brighter white colors. So I'm just looking at the photograph, looking at the direction of the fur. So the direction of the fur kind of goes down. So it's pretty much the same process as the other dog that I demonstrated, only your strokes are longer, fluffier strokes, and making sure the edges kind of cross over and overlap the sides of the background. So also, you don't have to use just the round brush for this. In fact, a flat brush is going to be helpful for long-haired dogs too. So this is the 3/4 flat brush. Just like in the brown dog, I filled that area in with using that brush at that front chest area of the dog. I used this same brush, but because this is long hair, I'm doing more textured, longer strokes. I'm using both the full width and the tip of the brush going around her mouth. But I can still create long hair texture using this brush. So she's got the white fur, but also I can introduce pieces of black. So like right here, dragging that brush down using the full width is going to create that long hair texture right here. And just because it's a black area does not mean there's any white in there. We can use that white to create variety in that black color. Over here, this 3/4 flat brush does a really nice job on this fur. Using the full width and just kind of very loosely filling this in. Kind of quick, dry strokes. Not using a lot of water in this, but that's how you would create the long hair texture in a long-haired dog. I would recommend using a lot of this flat brush. It does a really good job at creating that texture. Go around our eye. So there is how I would do the border collie or any long-haired dog if that's what you're doing. This is the conclusion of how to paint a pet portrait. I hope the information and techniques demonstrated in this video were helpful for you. Thanks for watching and thanks for painting with me.